Let's be completely and totally honest with ourselves. Regardless of your own personal views, I think we can safely say that most people dislike political satire in cartoons. Most of the time it tends to be done poorly, falling into the traps of either being tactless, unfunny, offensive, or straw-manning the argument it's opposing. Think about the cartoons you've watched. Can you honestly think of an example entirely based around political satire that you enjoyed? Only one comes to mind, and that was done by a man who tends to screw up political satire in his other shows. American Dad can be a show that's witty and downright poignant at times, but generally that's not the show you think of when you think of Seth MacFarlane. Family Guy is a show I've covered no less than 3 times on my channel, and political satire is honestly ranked very low on reasons I hate the show in its current form. But when Family Guy tries to do political satire, it tends to screw it up. Off the top of my head, I can only think of one instance of political satire on Family Guy that I thought was done well, and that was PTV. But here's why the rest fail. Let's start by looking at the characters. The only character whose politics are directly tied to the character is Brian Griffin. Here's the problem. Brian Griffin is a douche. It's just who he is. And here's the other problem. Brian is often used as a stand-in for Seth MacFarlane himself, which sends a pretty bad message. If your mouthpiece on the show is a character who's typically immoral, what does that say about how you view your own beliefs? This principle alone is why Family Guy is handicapped when it comes to political themes. None of its characters can be taken seriously when they're treated as the correct characters, or at least morally right, because Family Guy, for the past decade at least, has essentially been a show about douches being douches. The show is hindered from the get-go on being able to take any character seriously. Political satire is done well when there are characters who have ideas to bounce off of each other, but you look myopic and disrespectful to other points of view when only one side of a particular issue is represented well, especially when one side is represented at all. But let's take a look at a show that I haven't talked about ad infinitum, and let's do that with the example of Mike Judge. Mike Judge is one of the most respected and iconic figures in animation. He did represent both sides of the X-axis on the political spectrum. However, there is a caveat. He separated them into 2 different shows, one good and one bad. And the one with good in the name is the bad one. You can tell a lot by an author by how they write people they disagree with. The political satire contained within their work can more or less be considered in good faith if the people the author disagreed with are portrayed accurately. King of the Hill was Mike Judge's attempt at depicting his own side, and it contains some of the most relatable and well-thought characters of any cartoon I've ever seen. I guess you could say it's one of the most real shows out there. While all the characters in King of the Hill share more or less the same political bend, this clashes with the world around them in a way that epitomizes a political struggle. While containing no overtly left-leaning main characters, King of the Hill shows the plight of a man in a world that becomes increasingly more foreign to him. And here's the key. The show didn't live or die based on politics, and when the time was right, they excelled at portraying political issues. And I thought so even when I didn't agree with the message of the episode. I bring up King of the Hill because Mike Judge's show he did after King of the Hill was terrible because it did none of the things King of the Hill did. The characters and show itself lived or died on its political message. Neither side of the political spectrum was represented well. The show had some of the most artificial sounding character interactions in animation, and even the color palette made the show seem artificial. But Mike Judge clearly didn't know how to do left-leaning characters, and it certainly shows in The Good Family. What you have is essentially an entire show of straw men. And can we please talk for a minute about this, because I'm getting sick and tired of it. Strawmanning tends to be the biggest pitfall of anyone who tries to do political satire in any medium. Why? Well, in general, the political satire that is done poorly by this reason results from an inability to find flaws in one's own side, or to flat out ignore them. Literature Devil did a great video about this very topic, and I'm going to be honest, this tactic is more common from the political left, possibly due to the greater volume of cartoons made by creators from the political left. The straw man is so infuriating because it comes from a blatant disregard for respecting one's political opponents, and a sense that one's own political beliefs are common sense, and no one should believe anything else or else they're a bigot. Such thought processes could alienate your audience and make you less credible. You're less likely to convince those that disagree with you if you do this. If you can't respect other people's ideas, why do you expect them to do anything but resent the fact that you're calling them horrible people? But maybe that isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is placing yourself on a moral pedestal at the cost of literally everything else. Like in these Steven Universe shorts Cartoon Network have been putting out that try to inform people about race issues, but instead, shame the audience they're claiming to educate.
Kids, don't be racist.
Rule of thumb, when someone who's telling you their opinions thinks they're educating you, their opinions are usually garbage, or they're an exceptionally arrogant person, sometimes both. Sure, there were black musicians and inventors that get overlooked, same as there were white slaves under the Arabs and Romans that get overlooked. Even the word Slavic, which categorizes an ethno-linguistic group of Europeans, comes from the word slave. But acknowledging the existence of that nuance wouldn't make you look as good for shaming the audience, would it? Obviously, we're not going to talk about things such as white slaves and black Roman warriors that weren't as common. And in Western society, guess what color most people are? So of course, the most notable people we learn about and talk about are going to be a part of the majority demographic. I'm guessing most notable people that get talked about in, say, Zimbabwe aren't white. That's an especially poignant example considering the fact the Zimbabwean government seized white farmers' lands solely because they were white. And that's not even the worst example of strawmanning from Cartoon Network. OKKO is especially known for only being good when it doesn't do political messages. Bad uses of political messaging can ruin what was otherwise a good show. But let's for a second tie this back to the central question of the video. Why do cartoons tend to suck at political satire? Well, for this we must go to a different form of entertainment to help answer this question. In the 2020 NFL season, before the game between the Chiefs and the Texans, there was an arm link before the game to signify unity towards the vague goal of ending social injustices. Or, at least that was the cover story, as it honestly might be one of the largest virtue signals of 2020, which is a lofty statement to make. And I don't really want to talk about the event itself because, honestly, I don't really care, but more interestingly, I want to talk about the response to what happened. It matters a great deal more in the grand scheme of things, and helps me explain my point. The right would have you believe that this was done to brainwash people to a certain way of thinking. The left would have you think that wanting to get on with the game makes you a racist. Neither of these is true. In actuality, things like football and cartoons are things people use to escape the cruel realities of the world. After all, when I watch something like Regular Show, for example, am I really expecting to see a show that makes me think deeply about political or social issues? No. I want to see a show about a bird and raccoon being hilarious. And if I can do some introspection on the side of that, then it's a nice bonus. But I don't watch a cartoon, especially a comedy, or a football game expecting politics. Most of the time I'm trying to avoid it. I often make YouTube videos to avoid the political struggles of the day, which is why, after 44 videos, this is my first primarily political video. After all, the demonstration at Arrowhead Stadium did very little except make people talk about how their football game got delayed. No real change happened because of it. But if the side that wants to virtue signal about COVID can ignore that to virtue signal about something else, I guess either way it removes me from a form of entertainment. This is why shows like Lil Bush and Our Cartoon President fail so hard, by the way. They tried to make fun of current issues in each episode, dating each episode when you come back to them, especially since Our Cartoon President is still airing while Trump is out of office. Well, out of office in theory. Biden's name might as well be Other Trump for all intents and purposes, because they're essentially cut from the same cloth. Lil Bush came out right before Bush went out of office. Our Cartoon President, a show primarily made to beat the Orange Man Bad Horse, is still airing into the term of another president. And notice how that trend skipped Obama. You guys should know exactly why, but maybe I wouldn't harp on about Lil Bush and Our Cartoon President so much if, the political digs were equally distributed across party lines. Because my money's on Biden not getting an awful cartoon made about him, but the next red president will. In fact, looking back, the trend of only Republican presidents getting cartoons made about them goes pretty far back. Theodore Roosevelt was the first real-life person depicted in animation, after all. To be sure, political satire in cartoons is hardly done well, and when it isn't, it's a surefire sign you don't respect your political opponents. The goal of political satire should be persuasion, not vilification. If done well, it can make me respect you even if I disagree with your message. If done really well, it will make me change my own opinion. The problem arises when you value your opinion so much, you make people who disagree feel like they're below you. If you think all the racists are here and all the flag burners are here, chances are you're who I'm talking about. Bigots are evenly distributed across the political spectrum. Anyone who's telling you otherwise is so insecure in their own beliefs they're willing to vilify their detractors for clout. Don't let these kinds of people guide the discussion. They abhor discussion, because they abhor ideas that aren't their own. You deserve a valued opinion. Don't let anyone tell you you don't. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.